We're going to get started. I'm not going to be introduced. I'm going to introduce myself because I'm from DCJS. I'm Riegert and Giammaresi. I'm the director of the Erie Crime Analysis Center. This is John Riegert, who's the director of the Capital Region Crime Analysis Center, which used to be the Albany Crime Analysis Center, and changed because they've taken on so many more counties. I'm going to talk about the beginning of how we started this whole program. But first, in the 1980s, I was a young police officer, and we had this captain in our precinct. And this is how I got introduced to crime analysis. He had a pin map. And what he would do is he would, go through the messages. Back then we had teletype machines that would put out the messages, the crimes. And he would get the pins, and he'd have a color for burglary, a color for larceny. He would spend all day on this map, and he'd do really neat. And he'd hang that map up so we could look at it. We didn't know what we were looking at, but we were going to look at his pin map. He would take it to meetings with him, community meetings, meetings downtown, with commanders. And one day he was really upset because I looked at the map, and one of the police officers put all the pins in Delaware Lake, which was in the middle of the district. So that was the end of the crime analysis. Anyway, that's how I was introduced. We started this program back in actually 2007. I was hired December. We had nothing. I remember when I started, I was in Buffalo Police Headquarters where we're located. And we had a big empty room. It was the old 9/11, the county 9/11, which was in the Buffalo Police Building. And it was a disaster. And I just looked at, we had carpets on the walls. I guess they didn't like sound. Asbestos, that's just a big mess. I just looked and I almost started crying. I said, what the hell did I get myself into? I had a really nice job and I'm walking into this. But what was nice is DCJS, the support was unbelievable. I would ask for something and it would come the next day. We started in December. We were up and running in May of 2008. It was us in Monroe County. Monroe County, their crime analysis center, that's in their police department, and it was already done. A brand new building. It was beautiful. Tim Hickey was the director. I met him, and I was, that's not fair. I got to go to this dungeon, and yeah. But anyway, and then we had Syracuse. We were doing the three at the same time. In Syracuse, there were a lot of problems with the county and the city working together. There were asbestos problems. It was going to be on the 4th floor. It ended up on the 2nd floor. And that took a little bit of time, Syracuse. Anyway, we started this program, and we're getting technology. And the first thing we were able to get, of course, were the local RMS system. And Buffalo was CHARMS, and I don't know what the other ones were in the other cities. And we had DIG. Everybody knows what DIG is, Visual Analytics, a federated search system. I got to tell you, in the first 6 months, it never really worked. It was just one headache after another, servers and all these problems. Eventually, we had that done, and the other thing that was really important is the agencies that we were affiliated with. I'm a guest, a tenant of the Buffalo Police Department, and I could say the command staff of the city of Buffalo is unbelievable. I know some of them are here now. I'm trying to get brownie points. I still have to deal with them. But that's true with all the centers. I know that Monroe County, they went into the Taj Mahal. Syracuse was difficult, but I actually had to go there and help out a little bit, and eventually it did get done. Denise O'Donnell and John Billage. John was the Deputy Commissioner of Public Safety, and Denise O'Donnell was the Commissioner. They drove us. They really wanted this done. I remember John Billage. He called everybody handsome. He'd call me up and say, handsome, could you take care of blah, blah, blah? I said, yeah, John, I could do that. He called me up 5 minutes later and said, did you get it done? That's how John was. And I know some of you are still here that knew John. He was outstanding. He really pushed hard to get this done. So what kind of hurdles do we have? The physical plant wasn't so much a hurdle. It was dealing with law enforcement agencies. This was new to the area. We wanted their data. And how do we get their data? We have to talk them into it. City of Buffalo wasn't a problem at all. Outstanding in every way. The suburban departments were tough. Chiefs don't like to part with their data. What are you going to do with it? You're snooping. It just went on and on and on. Luckily, one of the largest town in Buffalo, Amherst, the chief there bought in, and then the rest fell in line. We had 30 agencies in Erie County. We had to market ourselves. We had to learn first. So we went to other centers. We went to New York City. We went to Nassau and Suffolk, and we saw what they had. And we kind of copied some of the things they were doing. We didn't have a lot of technology, and I only had 2 analysts at the time. We didn't have a big staff. What turned everything around, hiring the analysts that we have now, it was a game changer. I have 3 of the original analysts still with me, which I'm really thankful for. Thank you, analysts that are still here. So what is a hurdle? How do we prove ourselves? We would go out and market. I had to go to every police department. I talked to the chiefs of police of Erie County, and we had to market ourselves. And I didn't feel comfortable because we didn't really know what we had until the staff came aboard. But we did go out, we talked, and the chiefs still nodded, okay, sure. They didn't really understand what we were doing. We hired the staff, and everything just took off. And I'm going to get into the crime analyst in a minute. We moved really quickly after that. We started evolving. Technology started to come on board. Social media, at the time, I'm an old man. What's social media, right? Well, we have an analyst. She's still with us. MySpace. We had MySpace. They're looking at MySpace. That doesn't exist anymore. That was Facebook, Twitter. Those were the things back then. But they took off with social media so quickly. And we started cultivating a group database. We called it a gang database with the city of Buffalo. That's theirs. But we would go in. We had our fictitious accounts, and we got it up to 2,000 group members, through the years. So I have notes. The analysts, they were not trained in doing this. And I really didn't know how to train anyone except for law enforcement and penal law, things like that. But DCJS hired a trainer, John Conti, and he brought in other trainers. I remember Noah Fritz came, Rachel Boba at the time. And we started to learn all about crime analysis. And in the meantime, the analysts just took it upon themselves to start looking at Part 1 crime, developing patterns and trends. We weren't real tactical at the time. All of a sudden, they started becoming tactical, and they started showing the police department we could help you solve crimes. I think it started with robberies. We started finding patterns and finding suspects. You're late. Anyway, they started finding patterns, and the command staff, they bought in. They were with us. It's the detectives on the street and patrol. They didn't know what we were doing. In fact, one of the patrol officers, we would go out and train all of the patrol officers and the detectives. He said I was violating civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy. So I told him, I said, we have cameras in your house too? And then he stopped. Anyway, so going forward, the analysts kind of took control, and I was guiding them. I think I'm a supervisor, and part of it is to guide, to help, to assist, give them all the tools they need. And every few months we would get new technology. Just looking at it, we didn't have anything LPR. I remember we went to a conference probably around 2009. LPR was just coming around, and we went to this big conference. I think it was near Saratoga, and LPR was used for police officers to pull over cars. There was no data servers that collected that data, okay? We started looking at, well, let's collect the data. So the analysts, and I have to give them all the credit because they're the backbone of all the centers. And I'm going to go through the data and say, what do you guys do? Well, you look at data, you find crime patterns, trends, you do administrative analysis, tactical analysis, just going on and on. When I come to work, I don't think that. I really think that you're saving lives, and you're making it a lot safer out there. And a victim that could be a victim won't because you did something about it. We talk about heroes, police. Could the analysts raise their hand? How many analysts are here? 3? Okay. No. Okay. How many law enforcement? Okay, it's about half and half. Well, I think of you as heroes. Police officers go out there and they save lives. They do. They go into burning buildings. They do all kinds of things. But, we've had presentations. One in particular, custom notifications. And I know Buffalo, so I'm going to bring them up, and I could bring other examples of other centers up, and we all do the same thing anyway. Anyway, you have the custom notifications in Buffalo. There's shootings a few years ago. They had 300 shootings. They're at 120 right now. That's a big drop. And actually last year, it keeps going down last year. We're actually down 50 from last year. And a lot has to do with going out. I think they've gone out almost 300 times to talk to these kids that are posting guns on social media. Where do they get those postings from? The Crime Analysis Center. Our analysts are in social media all day long, and they're looking for these young people with guns. And I don't know, police officers know what it is to go on a murder scene when a young kid gets killed, and watching the parents, the pain that they have to go through. Well, you're preventing that pain. Each and every one of you, I know you're preventing the pain. That's what I think about when I come to work. I don't think about, spreadsheets and Excel, because guess what? I don't know how to do any of that stuff. I'm not supposed to. The other directors, we're not supposed to do that. Okay. So when I think of, going back to this, when I think of you, just look at LPR. We've created, finding cars. It used to take us hours to do it. It takes minutes to do it now. We've gotten so advanced. And this comes from the analysts. You have a person who's hit by a car by a drunk. We locate the car, the person's arrested, and you're saving somebody else's life down the line because that drunk's going to keep drinking and driving. Little things like that. Car popping, right? How many been a victim of a crime here? Raise your hand. I had my car broken into in front of my house, right? They took the change, but they broke the window and all kinds of things. So how do we prevent that? And analysts come up with these ideas. They came up with what looks like a parking ticket, but it's actually what to do to prevent your car from being broken into, stolen. It's a very nice card. Well, we created this card in the city of Buffalo. I think they made like 50,000 copies, or 50,000 cards. And the officers went around where the high crime areas with car break-ins, and they put them on the windshields. People were thinking they got tickets. Well, they didn't. And of course, they were relieved, and they read what they got. They put them in the hotels when they have visitors in downtown Buffalo. Well, we tracked this, and we found that the car larcenies went down 17%. So you actually made somebody who would have been miserable not be miserable. Or they are miserable for something else. Some people are just miserable, right? So anyway, oh, that's good. Sometimes it's my wife. Facial recognition. Oh my God, another game changer. And the analysts they become experts in this, and it boggles my mind how they find these people so quickly. We have a robbery pattern where somebody's robbing banks in Niagara Falls, in Buffalo, Rochester, and through facial recognition, they ID the person, and the police are looking at a different suspect. So what we did, we cleared one person, the innocent guy, and we arrested, the real culprit was arrested. An analyst did this. That's huge. When I was on patrol and I was in the police department, doing that, once a year for a police officer is kind of big stuff. You're doing it every day. Veritrax, right? Who would have thought we have Veritrax, the parole monitoring? It's introduced to the centers, and what do the analysts do? They decide that they're going to match crimes against the locations of parolees. And what happens after that? Well, we uncovered a few murders, home invasion, robberies, and they became witnesses to crimes. They were at scenes of crimes. Nobody in the country's ever done this until we started doing it here. And now all the centers are doing that. It's another game changer. Telephone analysis with I2 Notebook. Everybody was trained in I2 Notebook, all the centers. And with telephone analysis, we're putting people at the scene of crimes. By the way, in Buffalo, and I think most of the centers, half of our work is with the district attorney's office. We do a ton. And we enhance their prosecution by putting this information together, and the analysts become expert witnesses. And some of them don't like to testify, by the way. You can calm them down, but it's not that bad. She's shaking her head now back there. But you're actually helping, and most of these are murders. You're helping the prosecution to take that person off the street so he doesn't murder someone else. So I don't think about numbers. I think about what you're doing to change society for the better. Let's go on here. Oh, geez. Cameras. We all rely on cameras, and you guys are great with cameras. Most places we're looking at private cameras now. There's a lot of public cameras, but we have Safe Cam. Most cities are doing that. And I think in Buffalo there's thousands of cameras. Now we have the Ring cameras, the doorbell cameras. And I think soon we're going to be able to have access to those for the company. Because people, when they buy those doorbells, they'll sign off and say if something happens, they'll share that information with the police. So now we can just go to a company for that information. Murders have been solved several times by private cameras, and we're lucky enough, and the police department's been great. They've gone out and they've gotten all this information from people who have cameras in their homes and businesses, and that's what we really rely on now. So through the cameras, you're saving more lives. Because you're finding an analyst sitting behind a computer, and I could give several instances where they sat behind the computer and they actually solved the murder looking at LPR and cameras. And then we have things, some of the centers, we have link analysis where you put information into the system, and in a couple minutes you're going to get back pages, and you're going to get an I2 notebook graphic on that person, and that helps out with detectives. Something I do notice what we're doing now is back in the 80s and 90s when I was a police officer, it would take months for a detective to gather the information that we could give them in a few minutes, which results in probably saving lives. So, okay. Okay, real-time crime analysis, that's something that's new. When we started this program, I never even imagined we would come this far. You talk about real-time crime analysis where we're actually on top of the crime as it's happening. And many of the centers are just solving crimes as they happen. When there's a bank robbery, we get the bank photos right away and we start working on it. It all works really well. But in the big picture, I keep saying you're saving lives and you're stopping victims from becoming victims. And that's exactly what you're doing. You talk about, what does a crime analysis, what do we do? Well, we do strategic analysis, tactical, and on and on and on. You're actually, what you do, you save lives. Okay? So, I'm going to give some advice to the crime analysts, and then John's going to take it over. Because I've been in the center for 12 years, and I see a lot, and I see other centers, and I see the successes, and I see some things that I'd like to give them advice someday. So if I could read my writing here. Oh, yeah. We're in a center, and we're all tight. We're close together, and we all have different personalities and stuff like that. And it's really important. When I hire people, I really look at how they get along, how they're going to get along, what's their personality like. Because I always think you could train somebody with average intelligence to do the job, but somebody who's super smart, the personality might be so bad that he would destroy the whole center. So getting along is really important in any occupation. So I always say, live by the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. I try to treat others the way I would want my family to be treated, and sometimes it's not good. But the other thing is developing listening skills. I don't think there's any courses in college. Maybe you could correct me. Is there a course on listening skills, how to listen? I don't think there are any courses. That's the one thing. When a police officer or law enforcement asks you for something, you might think you know what they're asking for, and then when they get it, they say, well, that's not what I wanted. You have to kind of repeat it back to them, and if you suggest a better way to do it, let them know. So that's the one thing in listening skills. I have a problem with that because I'm an old man, and I have to interrupt because I know I'm going to forget what I was thinking unless I get it out now. That's just, it happens, believe me. Father Time catches up to all of us. Patience, and this is something that's really important with police officers. I was a police officer for 22 years, and I worked in some really high crime areas. And I got to tell you, the life of a police officer is not fun. You know, it really isn't. It's a hard life. And when you're out there in a hot summer night, you're in a larger city, you're going from call to call to call, and you have to take crime reports in between the calls. And sometimes you don't put all of the information down that the analysts want. And sometimes I hear an analyst looking at this and says, this is useless, there's not enough information. Be patient. The police officers are out there getting their butts kicked. They're seeing some horrible things. They're seeing things that I wish I didn't see. So when you get upset at a report, just remember what the officers are going through. So be patient. By the way, we really appreciate our law enforcement partners. Me with the city of Buffalo, you with Albany PD. They couldn't be better to us. They've been great landlords, I have to say. The other thing is that I noticed with, that happens very rarely, but it does, is when you send data out, you might make a mistake because you have fat fingers. I hear that. You have to double check your work and have somebody else read it. We all make mistakes, but our credibility is at stake. You know, when we make a mistake, everybody looks at it a little bit differently. So we really can't make those types of mistakes. And I do get that excuse sometimes, fat fingers. That's not a good excuse. You know. Yeah, the other thing, you know, having a good rapport with law enforcement officers, and that's something we try to stress. They come down and see us. We, you know, in the beginning, it was kind of, I don't know if you remember that commercial with the Maytag man, the phone never rang. In the first, you know, few months that we were in operation, the phone never rang. You know, nobody knew about us. Now we have complaints by the one person that is willing to answer the phone that she doesn't want to answer the phone anymore because it just never stops ringing. And looking at numbers, when we started, we were probably doing maybe a few thousand products or requests a year. We're up around 10,000 a year, and that goes for most of the centers. The production that we're doing is astronomical. And then we look at the numbers in Buffalo, and I know this is the rest of the cities where the centers are. I started 12 years ago, and I remember in Buffalo we had about 18,000 Part 1 crimes. This year, and I've been tracking it pretty closely because I love breaking records, we might be under 10,000. And that's true with the other centers too. I think we're making an impact. You know, I talked about the shootings, how the shootings are down. I think there's a correlation between the centers and the crime dropping. You know, because when we start thinking of ways to prevent crime, like I said with the postings of the car larcenies, and then SEPTED, we've been involved with that. I think we do make an impact. And with the police department, we give them all the data they need. We do the hot spots for them. We give the hot pockets, in Buffalo's case, to get the micro areas where crime is prevalent or at the highest. So I think that we actually are helping to bring crime down. So that's, again, with the crime analyst. You probably know right now I'm your biggest fan. The other thing, how are we measured? How do we get measured as a crime analysis unit? Well, Gottlieb, I think, wrote the book of crime analysis. Am I right about that, Gottlieb? Is that anybody know? Anybody read it? Come on. You read it? Okay. He said the only way to measure it is through success stories. And I know that the directors, we all are on top of always to submit success stories. That's our only real measurement. And I think we've had thousands of them, success stories. And that's something that we have to prove ourselves with. You know, sometimes that funding gets a little bit better, proving how much work we do and the good work that we do. Okay, complacency. We always worry about that, and I know that I've seen us evolve through the years with the technology that's just been unbelievable. We can't be stagnant. We have to keep going, you know. And when I hire somebody, when I see the analysts, I always tell them I don't want to ever hear that's how we've always done it. Always find a better and new way to do things, and this has been true. Everybody's done that, and it's amazing how fast we're moving and how advanced we become. I look at all of the things you've done, and I wonder why the other states haven't caught on yet. I was lucky enough to go with Mark Heller, Mike Wood, Kevin Skellinger, myself. We went to Cleveland, Ohio, because the state of Ohio was looking at doing something similar. And we did a presentation of exactly what we do. And we thought they would really be impressed. I think they wanted to tar and feather us. They started arguing about budgets and all this other stuff. And we really didn't get anywhere. They said, well, New York State gets all the money, and they're just going on. Another state, it doesn't cost as much as people think it does to put this together, because we have so much cooperation from other agencies, and I look at New York State, and we're a big reason I think crime is dropping, but the other states haven't caught on yet. And we went from last place in 2007, I can guarantee it, because we had nothing, to I think the top in the country, and a lot has to do with the crime analysts. And when I speak about you, all the directors feel the same way. We talk about you all the time, and we really appreciate everything you've done. Without you, none of us would exist. I'd exist, but I'd probably be in a nursing home. The other thing is law enforcement. We did win law enforcement over because we're getting calls now because they want to be part of our network. Chautauqua County just signed an MOU. They're going to be part of our network, and we're looking at, and this is in our area. Genesee County, I think, next to Monroe County, they're joining. We started with 4 centers. I think we had 60 police departments. We're up to 365 police departments, so we must be doing something right. And I think this is going to be the fastest growing field in the country when it comes to law enforcement, because what we're doing is we're not only helping to solve crimes, we're saving time for police officers to go out and do their job, And with that, I'm going to throw this to John Riegert. I don't know what it said, the past and the future. So my career is coming close to an end, and John's going to be around for another 20 years, so he's the future.
I don't know about that much, but I'll pick up on what Jamie said in regards to the analyst. So one of the things I say a lot, and it sometimes sounds derogatory, but we all say the same thing quite a bit. When we refer to the analysts in a shop, we always say there are kids. There's a process of a little bit of pride when they do something. The first time we saw one of our folks get up in front of a room of law enforcement folks and do a presentation, there's a little pride in that. When we see them, reach out to an agency and get some buy-in from an agency that we couldn't do before they did that work, there's some pride in that. When they submit their bulletins to the IACA with a bulletin contest for their products they do every year, each director, mind you, at the end of the day when those awards go out, somebody's buying a round of drinks, and it's whoever's got those awards for the year. There's a little pride in that. I was able to do a presentation yesterday with Andrew Munson on the real-time crime work that he's doing. Today I got to introduce Ryan and Matt from our shop on some work that they're doing from our shop as well. They're here at this symposium, doing presentations. There's pride in that. To come in here this morning, walk in and have 3 or 4 people come up to you and say, John, those Capital Region crime analysts, they were the first one in the door at that beer hall, and they were the last one to leave. There's pride in that. Following what Jamie said in regards to this, I think I used to teach at St. Rose, and I stole it from a book from somebody else, but somebody talked about law enforcement and how it worked. And it was a giant straight line, and at the very end of the line, you see it going up a little bit. And so they used to talk about when William Peel started the process way back when, and pretty much how witness testimony really drove the bus on police work. Hey, what you see, what do you know? You talk to people, that was it. And then, they show these couple of lines. That was like 100 years, and then as you get to a couple more lines, there's radios, there's fingerprints, there's DNA. Well, we're in a time now, in these last 15 years, that outside of the CAC program, because of IT capabilities, and I tell this to our folks in the shop all the time, this line's going like that, crazy, because of what we can do in law enforcement and what everybody can do in every other industry as well, is because the technology changes. That's a huge change. What I think sometimes we love to try to advertise and bring back to our folks, and sometimes it's hard to do when these folks really didn't see that straight line. Jamie's seen it for almost 100 years, but some of us have seen it for like 25, 30 years, and really see that change and the amount of impact that the program is having. And, our analysts drive the bus, but all our partner agencies and the folks they have in the shop are really making a huge difference in impact. And it's because we have the coordination from DCJS, we have the partnership buy-in to make that all happen. But it's remarkable from our perspective, and from a lot of guys here in law enforcement who have experienced this process before, but where we were 20 years ago to try to figure out what happened in a homicide. And we've, for those of us who worked a lot of homicide cases, we all got those one or two that lasted forever or you never be able to solve, that you might have had a phone number that if we could have searched it and dig 20 years ago, we might have been able to close that out. Another point I want to kind of bring out, we talk about all these success stories and the work that we do, again, because of the analysts and the work that they do. Not only do we make a lot of successes in finding out who did the bank robbery, who committed the shooting, but I am convinced that way too many times that we can't count, that we are definitely, I say we, you guys are definitely making a difference in making sure that the guy who didn't do it didn't get dragged in, didn't get accused. I've been involved in a couple homicides. We locked up the wrong guy. You know what? And we used as best of the capabilities that we had back then, some big cases, FBI, NYPD, and we had the wrong people. And if we had the resources today that you guys are able to deliver, that wouldn't have happened. And that's as huge of a plus that'll never get counted in a success story that we can deliver as a return to our community as much as it is find out who the bad guy is. So Jamie talked about kind of what's going to happen in the future. Again, this 10-year, 12-year period with the Crime Analysis Center, what a change. First of all, putting the analysts in the front of the bus and making that all happen is the best thing that we ever did. I remember when John Billits interviewed me, I was the week before, I called DCGS and said, hey, I'm interested in the job, blah, blah, blah. I was going in for surgery, hip surgery. I'm on the recovery bed, still under sedation, and my phone rings. Hey, handsome, John Billits here. I'm like half out of it. Hey, Thursday, let's get together. I want to sit down and talk to you about this. Maybe we can make something work. Okay, John, hang up. I couldn't walk. So I walk into this restaurant to meet John. I got like canes like this. John's never met me before. He's wondering out what's going on. But the reason why John hired me is because when he talked about any police department in our area, I knew the guy. Oh, I know his cell phone. I worked with him. I did this. I've done this case here. I've done that case there. John brought me in because I knew everybody. 10 years later at the CAC, those guys that I all knew, good thing now they're chiefs and lieutenants and commanders that I can still talk to. But all those investigators, all those detective lieutenants, all those guys doing the street work, they don't know John Riegert. They know the analyst. Making that all happen and trusting your staff to be able to do that and having capable people there is what really drives that bus, which is a change that you would not have been able to put into play 15 years ago, I think, in law enforcement. So where do we go from here? Man, I really don't know. And I'm supposed to have an answer for DCGS to say where we're going to go from here. I just look at, as a profession, crime analysis, data sharing, law enforcement initiatives, how many things are changing when you look at what's changing in the state and how we're addressing law enforcement considerations and crime, what accesses we currently have in regards to technology and facial recognition. When they started delivering that to us, I'm like, that's really nice, that's cool, but we're not going to use that. We solved 4 bank robberies in the last 2 weeks with it. 4. Yeah. Not good people, apparently. So where we go from here, I really don't know. But there's from my perspective, just watching this, like, I'm not here for another 20 years. I don't know how long I'm going to be around, but there's a lot of young folks in our group here that's growing and growing and growing, and I think there's just an awful lot of opportunity that will come out of this eventually. When you have articles in the IACP, you get highlighted in there. You have recognition from Commissioner Green that he got this year, from George Mason. You have all these national recognitions that are coming about the center. It only speaks well to where the profession is going. And as we continue to get engaged with more and more agencies and doing more and more work, I think with technology the way it is, if we continue to be responsible with that process and with Mark Heller at the helm looking over that process and now having Ann Lauren in that position to kind of make sure that we're doing those things in a responsible way that the communities that we're working in will appreciate it and recognize what we're doing. I think it's really an unbelievable time to be involved in this process. And that's looking from 15 years ago, where I don't think there was too many police departments that would let an analyst sit in front of them and tell them what's going on, or an investigator to call an analyst to give me a picture of what's going on with a homicide, or tell an analyst everything that's going on with a homicide, to where we are today, where the analysts are. Last week we had a homicide in Troy, and Andrew spent a few days right there with the lead desk as they worked that case, and that was critical in a lot of the work that we were able to do for them. That's a huge change, and I just think as we move on from here, and seeing the growth we had from 3 centers to where we are now, about to turn on our 10th center, or now with our 10th center, it's really an exciting time, especially for those folks who are here and potentially here for a while longer. So, from Jamie's perspective, and he wanted to do his little fireside chat and give his perspective from where he's watched us. We watched this process from the very beginning, and to hear, the struggles that him and Timmy and the original folks did as they worked on the beginning of the program to where we are today it's kind of remarkable in this really short period of time we're here. That's all really I had. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add.
Does anybody have any questions? Maybe law enforcement has a question or a comment?
I have a comment.
Okay.
And then I got to go up the office before Dennis talks. So I've been a police officer for 32 years, and 12 years ago I became a detective. That's when the crime analysis center started. And I was not on board with it because I was ignorant. Call the crime analysis center. Who the hell are they? They're a bunch of civilians they hired and they're really smart. They can do all this. And I'm like, okay, I'll call them. So what I'm telling you is 12 years later, I mean, these guys, the director Giammaresi and his team, he's put together are invaluable. I call them on a regular basis. They sit down with homicide detectives. They solve crimes. They are the backbone of the department. We really appreciate them. They're great drinkers, too.
I don't like that part. Chief Richards, any comments?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions from the analysts about the future or anything like that? Any issues? This is your chance. You can ask anything. Ask anything you want. You won't get in trouble. Okay. Well, thanks for listening to us. He's going to talk now. Okay. Great.
A lot of time together.
Okay.
How many cops are in the room? There's one thing that's constant. Cops don't like change, right? There's another thing that's constant. Cops hate things the way they are. What happened with the Analysis Center, the creation of this, and I spoke of it last year at the same symposium, just in the context of, I started out as a report technician a couple years before Congress. As a report technician, civilian position that was never created before in the police department in Buffalo. So we literally took jobs away from cops. That's how it was looked at. So when the analysts came on board, it's that same concept that brought memories back to me about we're ostracized and they don't want us and they don't talk to us and they don't trust us and they don't need us. But we're there to type their reports and do the jobs that they couldn't do or didn't want to do. The analysts come along, you're stealing jobs away from detectives. That's our job. We're supposed to look this up. This is my job to call someone up or find a phone number, find an address. But then we're also creatures of habit, and the more we found out how valuable the analysts were, the more we used them. The value was just in the jobs that Kevin, Matt, Nancy Yellow Girl, all of the analysts, Kathy Marciano in the beginning. Kathy was right there with Jamie doing bank robberies with a passion. She would find information. She would call me up every day and say, "Chief, how come they didn't get the bank robbery yet?" And I said, "Well, just because you found out who he was doesn't mean we can make an arrest just yet, Kathy. Calm down." But the value in the analysts is just that they did such a terrific job that you are now famous for doing what you do and invaluable to the department. And as you can tell, you're embedded in all of the departments that now utilize the services of the crime analyst. Are you all right, Jamie?
Yes.
You're squinting again. Those glasses.
I got them. I just have to put them on.
So, you still got a few minutes. Any more questions?
Yes.
Yeah, and when we have a award ceremony, at least 3 times a year, we just recognize, say, as our civilians, we have a civilian honor of mayor's award or honor of mayor.
Stand up, Katie.
That's because we do value all the.
That was Deputy Commissioner Lark from Buffalo, by the way. I did offer them drinks if they would come up with these comments, just so you know.
What time?
If anyone else have questions, if not, that's our program for today. We'll see you tomorrow.